All right, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. This is Geoff of Fluent American, and we are here to target your pronunciation a little bit earlier than usual. We have to travel for a wedding, so that's why we had to move the time up. But just if you're not familiar with the setup for today, what we're going to be doing is we are going to be taking a look at your pronunciation, your audio files. I'll be providing some feedback based on American English pronunciation based on what I'm hearing from you. So if you guys have questions as I go through this, be sure to let me know. You can put the questions in the chat. Also, just heads up, we are streaming on YouTube and we're streaming on Lang 8 as well. So if you see my eyes wandering, it's just because I'm trying to keep an eye on both chats. Let's begin by saying some quick hellos. Hello to Ari. Hello to Miami. Hello to Ivan. Thank you guys for checking in. No, on the Lang 8 chat, making some comments about the clothes and things. No, we have to travel for a wedding in a little bit. So basically, as soon as my wife comes home and she yells, "Geoff, we have to go," that is my cue that we will have to shut down the stream. But before then, I want to try to get through as many audio files as we can so we can give you feedback on pronunciation. Our sentence for today. Okay. Thank you so much for the kind thoughts on the wedding. So our sentence for today is this one. You can see everything at youtube.com/fluentamerican. So if you're watching this on Lang 8, that's fine, but you will not be able to hear my audio and you will not be able to see my post on screen, just a note. Miami advised me to dodge the cake when it's thrown at me. I hope to be long gone from there, but if it gets to like cake throwing time. So here's our sentence for today. And you can see, did you know what the score was for last night's game? Did you know what the score was for last night's game? So let's just kind of talk about some things for pronunciation, just some general guidance before we listen to the audio that you all sent me. So some quick things. How about that? Did you know? So, if you say "did you know," that's perfectly fine. It's very understandable, but not necessarily the most natural way of saying that combination. You're more likely to say like "did you?" Did you? So notice that when you have like a D before a y sound, that it becomes like a j, makes like a j sound. For instance, like in judge. So instead of saying "did you," a little bit more common to hear "did you." And in fact, something that may even be more common than that is reducing the U into like a y sound. So instead of did you, making it more like did ya, did ya, did ya. Did you know? Did you know? Question here too. Hope you got my audio. I believe, Ari, which audio is yours? Let me know who I should be looking out for because I want to make it, because I think one audio file actually did get erased. All right, so going back to our sentence, that's how to start. So again, did you know? Also that no sound, that diphthong there, that oh, no. You want to make sure that again, it's like oh, did you know? So it sounds like that. To make sure it's clear. Okay, Aries manual. Okay, cool. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to double check. I believe I did. I'm double checking. I believe, yeah, I'm pretty sure I got that one. Okay, so yeah, we will definitely hear that in a moment. Yes, and there was the last one up. Okay, yes, so we will take a look at that. So did you know? Did you know? Miami makes a comment. There's lots of reductions. True. But again, on that O sound, not going to be reduced, but also not going to be super strong. What I see what some students do is for like no, that O sound, they do like an O, no, but it's not no. It's more no, no. Notice that my lips don't have to go super small and super round. They can be a little bit more relaxed than that. Okay. Slight round, but not too much. Also, as always, placement low in the throat and relax. So again, no. No, so it's not no, more no. Did you know? And in all honesty, though, let's talk really quick about thought groups, because this is going to have an impact on pronunciation as well. I would probably split this sentence into two parts. Like, did you know what the score was? Did you know what the score was? Or I would probably put a thought group after was. And then for last night's game, Okay, so that would be my second thought group. So I would do 2 thought groups. Remember, in a thought group, in each thought group, there's one word that receives heavy stress. So it's kind of determining what words you want to stress. I would probably stress score. Do you know what the score was? Do you know what the score was? And then last night's game. You have this 3-word group, last night's game. So it's like adjective, adjective, noun. In situations like this, usually the heavier stress will go on the last word. So you would expect the stress to be on game. It's like, did you know what the score was for last night's game? Did you know what the score was for last night's game? So this is also going to have an impact on the first part too, with the did you know? Because if I'm not putting a stress there, if I'm putting the stress on score, then I can reduce this even more. Instead of saying did you know, I could say, do you know? Do you know? Do you know what the score was? Do you know what the score was? So notice there, in terms of common reductions, a lot of times instead of saying did you know, it gets super reduced. Do you know what the score was? Do you know? Do you know? Do you know what the score was? Do you know what the score was? Do you know what the score was? So really, like, depending on who you're talking to and the speed of the conversation and things like that, very likely that that first part is going to be extremely reduced. Some people will speak more clearly. Some people, will say, did you know, or did you know? But I think there's a really good chance that listening to that conversation is going to be really reduced. Do you know? Do you know? Do you know what the score was? So again, did you become just like do you know? Do you know? Do you know what the score was? Let's talk really quick about score. So this is our stressed word. You want to watch out for that R at the end. That's going to be really key. You want to make sure that placement for that R sound is low and relaxed. So if you're doing like score, like if you find yourself making like an type sound, then that is a sign that your placement's too high and it's too tense. Okay, so you need to try to relax it more and try to get more air through your throat. And it's tricky because the back of your tongue is high, but the placement still needs to be low. So again, it's not it's more The difference there is just the amount of air that I'm getting through my throat, and that again, the placement's lower and things like that. And if you're not sure what placement is, take a look at our channel. We have a whole playlist that just talks about placement. If you only have time to study one aspect of American English, then I would really recommend that it's placement, because that has a huge impact on how you pronounce everything. I know a couple of comments came in. Just want to check on the Lang 8 stream. Yeah, so exactly. Miami's mentioning that you don't even really need to say did. You may just hear or know. So a lot of times that did will get cut. Hello also to Candy that jumped in. Hello to a couple of people that jumped in on the Lang 8 stream as well. If I missed that. Do you know what the score was? Also note for was, this is your schwa sound, so it's not was. It's not like an ah sound. It's more of an low in the throat, very relaxed. Was. Do you know what score was? Score was. Also note too, there's going to be some linking there between that R on score and that was. Score was, like was, score was. Okay. And then our last part, so like for last night's game, we've talked about 3-word groups before, but if you're not familiar with the concept, there's lots of units in speaking in English where 3 words kind of join together to make kind of like a group. And what often happens in these situations is you want to put a little bit of stress on the first word and then a heavier stress on the third word. So for instance, here we see last night's game. This is all kind of working together as one thing. So I'm going to do a little bit of stress on last, like last. Then on nights, I'm going to lower the stress. It's going to be weaker. Last nights. And then on game, I'm going to go back up in terms of my pitch. And I'm actually going to hold that vowel sound a little bit longer. Last night's game. Last night's game. Other things that we see here as well is that this is a yes-no question. The answer to this is yes, I did know the score. Or no, I didn't know the score. So in these types of situations with a yes-no question, you want to make sure that your intonation is going to rise at the end. So it should be like game. If you are saying practicing and you're recording yourself, which I always recommend, and you notice that you're saying game, that's a falling intonation, and that's not going to be quite the right tone. Okay, so for instance, if you're familiar with tonal languages, for instance, like Mandarin, it's kind of difference between like a second tone and a fourth tone. Okay, so like if you say like game, it's a little bit more rising. versus game, which is more falling. And you want to make sure, again, yes, no questions, you want to rise at the end. So all together, this should sound like, do you know what the score was for last night's game? Do you know what the score was for last night's game? Because that's personally how I would pronounce it. You could add a third thought group. You could add a thought group maybe like after no. Like you could say, for instance, did you know? Did you know what the score was? But one thing I see with students a lot is that I think my students in general tend to have a lot of stresses in their sentences. And I think they tend to have a lot of thought groups in their sentences. And while native speakers can do that as well, I think a good practice, just to kind of get used to it, is to just try saying sentences with fewer thought groups and fewer stresses and just see how that affects your rhythm. Okay. Let's take a quick look at some comments again on the Lang 8 stream. So we see Miami saying, I feel like someone would take that as rhetorical. Yeah, did you know what the score was last night's game? The intonation, if you use the wrong intonation pattern with that sentence, it can change the meaning in terms of, does it even sound like you're asking a question? You know, or it can express frustration. Like, for instance, if you use a falling intonation, you're like, did you know what the score was for last night's game? Like that sounds a little bit angrier, or maybe it's like for clarification or something like that. So it definitely can have an impact on how people are interpreting what you're saying. I definitely think that's very true. Okay, so that's again how I would say the sentence. How would you say the sentence? Maybe you want me to take a listen to it. Well, you certainly can. Again, on the YouTube stream, youtube.com/fluentamerican, I have posted a link. On this link, if you go to it, you'll see a spreadsheet. By the way, this is the same link every week. I just update it. So if you want to get your pronunciation reviewed any week, you can take a look at this link, see the question that I have at the top, and add your answer. Basically, you're going to be using a website called Vocab, and then this website you record yourself. It will give you a link. You need to post your link into the spreadsheet. I will see it. I'll be able to hear you, and I'll be able to give you feedback. Because that's how this works today. We have a couple audio files already. I'm going to do my best to get through as many of them as I can before I have to go. Additionally, I know that in my pronunciation Telegram group, there's at least one person I need to look at. I think it's Ed's. If you're not sure what I mean by pronunciation Telegram group, hello to people who jumped in on the Lang 8 stream and also on the YouTube stream, if I haven't said hello. If you're not sure what our Telegram group is, basically every day of the week, I provide a question related to pronunciation. So for instance, we'll do intonation practice. Today was actually seafood topics. And I give you audio, and then you can send me audio, and I give you corrections and things like that. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, you want pronunciation practice every day, kind of like what we do today, but you just want to do it more often, more regularly, you can go to patreon.com/fluentamerican and sign up for our Telegram group. Okay. And you'll get questions and feedback every single day on your pronunciation. All right, you're going to see me put on my headphones so that way I can hear the audio files that I have received. There are two options. So the first option is trying to say this sentence. And then the second option that some people are doing is they're just describing a project that they are working on for like a couple of seconds. Okay. If that's the option that you choose, I'll give you some real quick feedback just on pronunciation, things I hear, and maybe a little bit on grammar. That's kind of the highlight. All right, so like I said, you will see me put on some headphones. I'm going to also share my screen and my audio so that way you guys can see what I'm seeing and hear what I'm hearing. Give me 1 second just to get things set up. And of course, as we're doing this too, if you have additional questions related to English or pronunciation or things like that, you can always put them into the chat box. Okay. But again, so on YouTube, you can see the link where you can post your audio. And here is, again, the sentence option if you want to get feedback on your sentence. All right, let's share everything. Give me 1 moment. Okay, so here are our audio files for today. So again, you can see what the document looks like. You'll put your name. You can put the link from vocab.com and then the rest. A quick note, I think your file got overwritten. Marcos looks like sent me 2 files. Just a note, because they sound very similar to me. I think it's Marcos twice. It's just a note. And if you're watching this, if you can send me a new link before I head out today, that would be great. Okay, so this is our first file for today. Again, if you want to hear what I'm hearing, before I give feedback, or if you want to see what I'm seeing, you need to go to youtube.com/fluentamerican. But let's take a look at this.
Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Okay, I'm going to play that one more time.
Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Okay. In general, I think this is pretty good. Let's listen to the first half.
Did you know what the score was?
Okay, so did you hear that? Did you know what the score was? So they're kind of doing what I was recommending with two thought groups. Okay. Did you know what the score was? Heavy stress on score. Did you know what the score was?
Did you know what the score was?
You even hear some of that did ya, instead of did you, more did ya.
Did you know what the score was?
Yeah, so I really like this first part. I think this first part sounded pretty natural. Did you know what the score was?
For last night's game.
Last night's game. So I think the big thing here for the second half of this sentence
was for last night's game.
I'm hearing last night's game, as opposed to last night's game. Last night's game. Can you hear a difference between last night's game and last night's game? Can you hear a difference between those? What I would say is that for night, you probably want that vowel sound to be a little bit more, just slightly more stressed, because right now it sounds a little bit too relaxed. I'm getting like not versus night. I'm going to play that again.
Night's game.
Last night versus last
was
night.
For last night's.
Yeah, last nights versus last nights. That's one thing I'm hearing. Hello to July. I'm in the Lang 8 stream.
Game.
And again, game versus game. Can you hear a difference between game and game? So how would you describe the difference between those? Well, I would describe it as placement. It sounds very tense. I'm hearing like gay versus game. You want to try to get the placement lower in your throat. Okay, so you're projecting from down here, remember. And also you want to make sure that it's very relaxed. More air needs to come through your throat. So it's like A. It's not A. It's more A. This is a diphthong sound, so there's going to be a little bit of movement. You're going to feel your mouth closing. So it's like A. We want to make sure that the placement stays in the same spot. Just because your mouth position changes doesn't mean your placement changes. So it's not A, it's A, gay, game. The other thing I would say, clear that again.
Game
versus game.
Last night's game.
So placement is true not just for vowel sounds. It's not just low and relaxed for vowels. It's also low and relaxed for consonant sounds as well. And this is something I've been working with a lot of students on recently for that M sound or N sound or lots of consonants. Try to get it low. So it's not that's way too high. It's more So it's not it's more So it's not game. It's game. Lower in the throat also for the M sound. Play that again.
Night's game.
All right, I'm going to play the whole thing. So again, did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Yeah, so those would be the big things I would suggest for our friend there. All right, I'm going to check back in the stream really quick. If you guys have questions about that, be sure to let me know. Thank you so much for sending that audio file. We're about to take a look at our second one. Some questions from Nightbot. Don't attack my night. Oh, that's... Mia, I'm sorry. I don't know. Oh, you probably didn't like the capital letters. I'm sorry, Mia. I'm sorry. I don't know why that happened. Sorry. I apologize that. That's actually, I'm saying they sound a little bit southern. That's, I think that southern accent can come through, like if you're doing like an A versus an A, like it sounds like that. It kind of turns into a drawl of sorts. So that can definitely make it sound a little bit southern. Mia says the chat is a little bit quieter here. I'm sorry, Mia. I'm sorry. keep both open if you can, so you can enjoy the Lang 8 chat, but you can hear the audio. Let's take a listen to our next one. And again, if you're trying to send in your audio file, here's the link to do it. And here is the sentence that we are taking a look at. Okay, so again, did you know what the score was for last night's game? Okay, let's take a quick listen. All right, let me reshare everything. And here we go. And again, if you're following on Lang 8 and you want to hear what I'm hearing, see what I'm seeing, you need to go to youtube.com/fluentamerican. All right, second audio file. Let's take a listen to this.
Do you know what the score was for last night's game?
Did you know what the score was for last night's game? Okay, that's kind of what I'm hearing. Let me play that again.
Do you know what the score was for last night's game?
Okay, so I think I like the first stress. So again, I'm hearing two stresses, which I think is very natural. I think that's good. I do think that the second stress is on a different word than I would choose because I'm hearing last night's game. You know, you would change the stress to like last night's game, like if you're trying to clarify. Like, no, not like last week's game, last night's game. Like, you know, it's like doing a situation like that. That's a situation where I think you would want to consider changing the stress. But in general, though, you know, this is an honest question. You're just asking, more likely to get that stress on game. The other thing I would say too is, let me play that again.
Score was for last night's game.
For last night's game. I want to hear game again for that intonation.
Last night's game.
Okay, it does rise. It's like game. Kind of does like a fall rise. Game versus game. It's more game. Fall rise is okay. I would have, again, part of this is influenced by this stress that you chose. Hello to Ada. Thanks for joining us. Part is just from the stress you chose. You know, if you stress night, that's going to affect your pitch and things like that, and maybe even your intonation to a degree. By taking that stress off of night and moving on to game, that would have let you do more of a falling intonation on night and then a more straight rise on game. So instead of game, you could have like night's game. You could do night's game instead of night's game. Like it just gives you more flexibility in terms of stress. So I would have moved the stress a little bit. Let's hear the first half of this sentence again.
Do you know what the score was for last night?
I want to hear that again.
Do you know what the score?
Did you know? I'm almost missing like the j.
Do you know what the?
It's like do ya. It almost sounds like do ya as opposed to did ya. Okay, or ja or ch. You know, you need something with that last d linking with the u, whether it's like a j or like a ch sound if you're reducing it a lot. But instead, I'm just hearing the first d on did, and that's changing the sound a little bit. It sounds almost like the present, like do you, do ya, versus ja or did ya, which would indicate more of the past. I'll play it again.
Do you know what is?
It's like do you know versus you know or did you know. Can you hear the difference between those? I'll play it one more time.
Do you know what the score was for?
I would also say score sounds a little bit overstressed.
Do you know what the score was?
Did you know what the score was? Did you know what the score was? I would have reduced that stress. I mean, yes, it's a stress word, but it doesn't have to sound so separate from the rest of the sentence. So it's not, did you know what the score was? It's, did you know what the score was? Did you know what the score was? As always, one common comparison I like to make is you can think of like pitch and stress as kind of like stairs. You know, you want your listener to be able to go up your staircase with you or go down your staircase with you. If you have a step that's too high or a step that's too small, or too low, I should say, that can make it hard for your listener because I'm going to trip. Like, did you know what the score was? Like, it goes up so much higher versus, did you know what the score was? What the score? It's a lot more reasonable. It's easier for your listener. Okay, so I wouldn't have exaggerated score so much on the pitch.
Do you know what the score was for last night's game?
And same thing with also night. You know, even if you're putting stress on night, you don't need to exaggerate it as much. You know, it's not last night's game. If you wanted to stress night, it would be last night's game versus last night's game. It's more last night's game. So just watch out a little bit for how you're handling your stresses. English is stress timed. I get it. You want to make sure that your stress words are clear, but you don't want to over exaggerate it too much because that's going to change the sound a little bit. Okay. But thank you so much for sending this audio file. If you have questions about this, be sure to let me know in the chat or in the comments after the live stream. Okay. Some other quick things here. Mia, you are welcome. Native speakers can send audio files as well. Sometimes we get people who are singing. Sometimes we get all kinds of things, in all honesty. Okay. It feels like I'm purring, making a comment about this. Maybe they're a cat. I'm liking this chat moment. Okay. Mia makes a great point here. So people don't get, it's not about talking fast, it's about blending. Yeah. A lot of people I think have this assumption that English is all about speed and like talking fast. And like that's that's really interesting because it's not just English. I think people learning any language associate speed with fluency. And the reality is that talking fast can actually have the opposite impact. Talking fast can actually make you less understandable to native speakers and make you sound less natural. To give you an example, on when I was a speaking examiner for IELTS, for one of the grading criteria for speaking is fluency. And one of the differences between a band 6 and a band 7 is some people will get a score of band 6 on IELTS because they talk too quickly, without the reasonable like linking and things like that. So you can actually get punished on language tests for talking too fast. The real goal that you should be paying attention to are things like linking, like how do you join words together across your sentence, stress and reductions. So for instance, which words are you emphasizing? And remember, stressed words are held longer. Reduced words that are not stressed are said faster, and the vowel sound often becomes weaker. It often changes to like a short I or a schwa sound. Okay, so those are the things that actually make you sound more natural. It's not just about the speed. So for a lot of people, it actually make more sense to maybe slow down a little bit when you're talking. Just because you're talking fast doesn't mean you're sounding natural. Yeah, and I think we mentioned some of these points about score. So like if you add too much stress to a word, what you do is you make it sound overemphasized. It sounds like you're trying to clarify. Like, did you know what the score was? No, not what the who the player was. Did you know what the score was? It sounds like you're clarifying or something like that. Exactly. Yeah. I would definitely agree with that. Hello, dude. This is Beta. Thanks for checking in as always. Can you say the word research? Yeah. Research. Research. Typically, also note that research, too, is that the stress usually, not always, but usually falls on the first syllable. It's not usually a word that you're going to stress the second syllable on. Okay. Hello to Alex, who jumped into the Lang 8 chat. Yeah, so for research, you usually want to stress the first syllable. I see a lot of students that want to stress the second syllable or things like that, but it's much more common to stress the first. And remember, these R sounds are going to be very similar for both of them. It's like research, 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 re, sir, search. So again, sir, research, research, research. So I hope that is helpful. A couple other questions. How do you say party? Okay. Good question. So linking R sounds to like a fast D and things like that. This is not just going to be words for party, some similar words to that. For instance, we'll see this on like 40. It's another quick example. That's the only one that comes to mind, but relatively, you see it on a couple of words that have like these RTY combinations. So what I would really recommend is that when you're saying like party, what I would recommend is don't worry. So this is 2 syllables, right? So don't worry about the second syllable before you get to the first syllable. Get through the first syllable first. That par sounds like par. You want to make sure that part is sounding clear first. Par. Once you feel comfortable with that part, making sure again that your R isn't too tense. Again, it's relaxed, it's low in the throat. Okay, back of your tongue's high, but super relaxed. Par. If you're saying like par, that's a sign that you're too tense, too not relaxed enough, and too high. Okay, so it's not par. Or if you're saying that pa, that's a sign too that the back of your tongue's not high enough. Okay, so just some quick examples of those things. So make sure that part is coming through clearly enough first. And the same thing, for instance, on the word like 40, like for, or for. So again, par, for, combinations like that. Make sure those are coming in clearly. Once you feel comfortable with that, then you can start worrying about that fast D flap T sound. Okay, it's like D, party, party. Okay, so it's not party, it's party, party. Okay, keep in mind too with the flap T or fast D sound, all you're doing is just raising and lowering your tongue very, very quickly. Okay, you don't even technically need to make contact with the top of your mouth. You can actually just raise and lower the tongue very fast. It's definitely something I would recommend practicing. We have some videos that talk about fast Ds or flap Ts. If you search our channel, if you type in fast D, or if you search our channel and search flap T, you'll see some of our videos that practice that. But again, it doesn't need to be a very strong D. You know, it's not party. It's not party. I see some students that do that. So that's a D sound that's a little bit too fast, a little too strong. So again, party, party, party. I would also say, you know, make sure that the R is strong enough. The D sound could be pretty weak. Party, party. You know, especially like if you're saying this quickly in a sentence, like, oh, how's the party last night? How's the party last night? I'm not even really saying. I'm not really saying like party. How's the party last night? I'm saying how's the party last night. That fast D sounds super weak. You can even make arguments not really even there. Party, 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 but not party. Okay. So those would be my suggestions there. We have some other questions too in the YouTube chat. I noticed when I try to lower placement, my speech rate slows down. It gets slow, it gets weak, and gets very breathy. Okay, Ed, if you could send me an audio file, with this, we'll take a listen. I probably heard it in Telegram group, so I'll take a listen. We are going to get to your audio in a bit. My guess is that you know, especially as you're experimenting with placement, you may feel that things are sounding too strange, when in reality, to a native speaker, they may sound actually pretty okay. What sounds weak or breathy to you may not necessarily be, you know? So just kind of something to be aware of. What I would say is that if you find that it's also getting like slow and weak, it could also be that things are getting a little bit too tense. So again, low placement, but still too tense. Because again, you really shouldn't feel any tension there. And because it's so relaxed, in theory, it shouldn't be taking a whole lot of necessarily energy, besides the fact that it may be something new and it takes a lot of concentration. So it's, you know, I do think it's something that the more you do it, the more you practice, the easier it will get. And I'll try to listen to your we can listen to your audio next. I think I have it up in the Telegram group, so we can kind of see if that's what we're hearing. Other quick questions. Back to here. Can I get away with party? I think it depends. So you mentioned if the word is not stressed. Can you get away with party, like party, if it's not stressed? You can. You know, I think that adding even a very, very slight fast D sound would just give it a little bit more backbone, a little bit more structure. To help with clarity a bit, but it's not. I would say in some context, yeah, you may be able to get away with party, like, oh, how's the party last night? The key thing though is that you do need that first R to be strong enough. Hello to Yoshi, thanks for joining us in the Lang 8 stream. So again, party. Can I get away with party versus can I get away with party? Yeah, so I think it really depends on context. My suggestion would be to go to youglish.com and just kind of see all the different ways that you're hearing people saying party. And you can kind of determine like, okay, this seems to be like the most common way. Okay. So for instance, because I think in general, you're going to hear a little bit more of a fast D sound. Okay, so I would take a look at this. Okay, I just sent you a link with the YouGlish link. Okay, so I mentioned for Ed, I want to hear Ed's because he's mentioned about kind of feeling throaty and breathy and things like that. So let's take a look. And by the way, if you just joined the YouTube stream or the Lang 8 stream and you want to get your audio file checked before I have to head out today, what you can do, first of all, you need to go youtube.com/Fluent American, but you'll see we have a link for our Google Doc. Go to the document and you can send in your pronunciation file. I will hear your audio and I will give you some quick suggestions based on what I hear. And again, the sentence that we are looking at today is, did you know what the score was? Did you know what the score was for last night's game? Did you know what the score was for last night's game? Again, depending on how much you want to reduce it. All right, I'm going to share my screen and my audio again. Let us take a listen. Okay, Ed, I believe this is yours. Okay, let me stop playing Telegram. Give me a moment. And Miami, what is up? What just happened? I'm going to put our sentence back up on the screen so you guys can see our words. And I will share my audio and everything. All right, guys. So what you are seeing right now, this is our Telegram group on pronunciation. And again, this is membership. Okay, if you go to if you go to patreon.com/fluentamerican, you will see this option to join our Telegram group. I'm looking for Ed because I know Ed sent me a file. And I had it earlier. Oh, here it is. Okay. Might need to turn this up.
Do you know what the score was for last night's game?
Can I play again?
And did you know what the score was?
It's like, did you know? This sounds very tense to me, Ed. I think your placement, I like your placement. I think it's low, which is great.
Last night's game.
But it does sound tense to me.
The score was.
Play that back from the beginning.
Did you know what?
It's like, did you know? Did you know? The other thing I'm noticing too, your consonant sounds are very strong. It's like, did you know? Versus like, did you know? What's the difference between did you know versus did you know? Did you know? It's the vowels. I'm giving the vowels the time to breathe versus the consonants. I think the consonants, this could also explain why if you feel like things are weak or kind of changing a bit. The consonant sounds often require a little bit more energy.
Did you know what the score was?
Because I'm hearing, did you know what the score was versus did you know what the score was? So one thing you can kind of do with sentences like this is you can try to take off the consonants. Just say the vowel sounds. It's like instead, did you know? You could be oh, like oh, did you know? Oh, did you know? Just do like short sections. Just do the vowels, and then once you can do the vowel part, then add the consonants. But make sure that the vowels are still getting the majority of the emphasis.
Did you know what?
It's like, did you know becomes oh, did you know? Did you know? Things like that.
The score was for.
What the score was. That the R is strong, but it might be too strong. Again, I would like you to get the O sound a little strong before the R. Or what the score. Did you know what the score was? Did you know what the score was?
Did you know what the score was?
Did you know what the score was? Some other things too, like linking. It's like instead of what the score, it's like what the. Take off the T on what.
The score was. Did you know what the score?
Because it's like what the, but it's more what the. So that T on what is going to link with the TH on the a little bit more. So you don't really even need that T on what. What the score was. What the score was. Did you know what the score was?
Did you know what the score was for?
I would also recommend maybe a rising intonation on the was. Did you know what the score was? Did you know what the score was? Because there's more information coming. And to let your listener know that you're not done talking, what you can do is use a rising intonation because that tells your listener that you're not done. You're not finished yet. Did you know what the score was?
Game.
And also on game, last night's game. I would let me play it hard again.
Last night's game for last night's game.
It's like last night's game. Very punchy, right? Last night's game versus last night's game. I would have reduced night a little bit more. Go down. You can lower the pitch more, reduce it. It'll be a little faster. Last night's. Then on game, you want to go a little bit higher. Last night's game. Last night's game. What the score was for last night's game. It's like, again, if you think of it as stairs, like last night's down. Game, then going up again. Last night's game. Okay, so those are my biggest suggestions just in terms of rhythm. I think your consonant sounds are too strong because I think that's making everything sound a little bit disconnected, a little disjointed. Okay, I'd like you to hold your vowel sounds longer for everything. For stressed words, you don't need to emphasize them quite as much. Okay.
Did you know what the score?
Because like even that did, like, did you know that did is super strong. I would reduce that more. Did you know? Did you know what the score was?
Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
And then paying attention to the intonation things that I mentioned about the rising intonations or the falling intonations and things like that. Okay. So I think your placement is actually in a generally good spot. I wanted to get more relaxed, more air, and I think giving your vowels more time to breathe will help with that as well. Okay. If you have some other questions about that too, you can let me know. But those are my quick thoughts for you. Thank you as always for sending that. I do appreciate that. Okay. I want to check and see what came in as I was looking at that. Okay. Mia's about to post the audio link. Yeah, let's get some more native speakers in here. That's okay if it's high. Make some comments. Ed, you need to make a mixtape. People are offering to buy your album. So Ed's getting some love for that. That's great. Ed, I hope that's helpful. You can keep me posted here in the Telegram group. And again, if you're interested in the Telegram group, every day we do pronunciation practice just like this. Okay, so we saw Ed's. Let's take a look at our next one. This is very dramatic. Oh, wow. I'm excited for you guys to hear this one. Okay. Give me 1 sec to share my audio and everything once more. Okay. All right, let's listen to this.
Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Okay. I like the intonation patterns in general. I'll play again.
Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Okay, so one thing is that you have 3 very distinct thought groups, and you can probably, I'll play again, you can identify them.
Did you know?
Pause, thought group.
What the score was?
Pause, thought group.
For last night's game?
And pause, thought group, because then your sentence too. So that's fine. You know, it's okay if you want to have this as 3 thought groups. I'm okay with that. What that does, though, is it can make your sentence sound a little bit disjointed or disconnected. And that's kind of the feeling that I'm getting with this. Part of this is also because your thought group pauses are so long and so dramatic that it's breaking up your sentence. So I would definitely recommend, you know, just because you have a thought group that's ending, just because you're having a pause, doesn't need to mean it has to be super long. My first suggestion would be reducing your thought groups.
Did you know what the...
You know, because that would have been some nice linking there. Like, did you know what? Because so no ending on this like w sound, what starting with this w sound as well. So there's no reason that those really can't be linked. Know what, know what. Trying to make it almost like one word. Know what, know what. Did you know what?
Score was for last...
Was for. So again, to connect this, you have a couple options here. One very common strategy that native speakers use to connect thought groups is they hold the last sound of the previous thought group until the next thought group starts. What does that mean? So for instance here,
or was for.
So instead of was for, it's more was for. Can you hear a difference between that? So I'll say mine again, was for.
Score was for.
Do you hear the difference? It's like was for versus was for. So you could have held that z sound at the end of was just long enough to it makes contact with that f. Just try to link those together. So just quick things to think about for your thought groups. Let me play the first part again.
Did you know?
I do like the linking. So I give did you know? Did you know? Did you know? I would say though that that did is so strong, and then no is strong too. So it almost feels like you're trying to do like 2 stresses in this one thought group, and it's only 3 words. You know, there's only 3 words in this thought group, so it's almost like we're giving a stress to everything. And I would have liked to have heard this with maybe a more reduced did. So instead of did you know, more did you know? Did you know? So lowering the pitch on did, saying it maybe a little bit faster, connecting it more with the yeah a little bit. So that way, no really stands out more. So instead, did you know? More, did you know? Did you know? Can you hear a difference between those? And how about the next part? Play again. Seems a little stuck.
For last night's game, did you know what the score was?
What the score was? What the score was? I would again, what and the, these are words that typically get reduced. They're not words that are typically stressed. I would have reduced those more. So instead of what the, more what the. Again, with what and the, that T on what links with the TH on the. So you could join those together more, like what the. And notice there's two schwa sounds together. It's like what the score. So again, compare that with the score.
You know what the score?
Because again, this is a case where very clear pronunciation. I understand every word you're saying, but it's not going to have that natural feel if every single syllable and every single word is pronounced super clearly. It's just it can't sound natural.
Do you know what the score was for last night's game?
For last night's game, I think you're putting a heavier stress on for than a game. Like, did you know what the score was for last night's game? Like, it sounds like you're trying to clarify, not like for like versus like on or to. Like, it's like you're really clarifying the preposition there. And I would have again put the stress on game. So instead of for last night's game, or for last night's game.
For last night's game.
Okay, so again, the original sentence, how I would read it was, did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Yeah, so I would say work on linking some of those words together a little bit more, linking your thought groups more, reducing your thought groups, changing your stress a little bit, removing some stresses, and moving the position. Again, not on for, but on game. Okay. I hope that's really clear. Thank you so much for sending that audio. I do appreciate it, as always. Okay, check the chat, see if there's any questions or things for me. Okay, and again, if you want to send your audio, okay, you can still do that. I've posted, again, the link so you can see it on the YouTube stream where to send your audio. Okay, and we're moving right along, targeting your pronunciation. Let's take a look at our next one. So that was a long one. That's one we just did. Back to some shorter, faster ones. I'm going to share my screen and my audio again. Okay, next up, take a listen. This was, yeah, so I think I mentioned earlier that I think your audio got overtaken. Oh, no. I apologize for that. That definitely sounds like Marcos again. Yeah, they're kind of similar to that. You can see earlier in the stream from my comments on that. This one. The score was for last night's game. I feel like we heard this one as well. It's like last night's game. Yeah, that one's sounded tense. So I believe we already heard that one as well. I know a couple of new ones came in. If I have not caught yours or I made a mistake, you can let me know in the chat box. But let's. I'm gonna give you back. I know. I want to see these. Just make sure that they're okay. Quick listen. Give me one moment. This is from Z. Cool. Pretty good. Okay, you sound good. All right, let's take a listen to these next ones. Also, some quick questions here before we take a look at those. Hello, if you're joining us on the Lang 8 stream, we're going to answer some quick questions from YouTube stream. It's like, so Beta says she wants to work on the dig. Okay. Trendra sounds. Yes, if we have time, I can definitely jump into that. And we do have some videos on that as well. I'll be there in a moment. Is the T in what held T or gets deleted? It depends on the situation. So like if you're saying like what was the, probably I would say slightly held, but also some linking there too. It's like what the. I don't think it necessarily gets as strong as like a glottal stop. But it's like what the score was. It's like what the. That's kind of the sound that you're going to get with your linking, like what the score. So I wouldn't say it gets completely deleted. No, it's more kind of a linking with like a held T, like what the, because part of the reason I say that too is because notice what happens also to your vowel on what, when you hold a sound, when you do like a held T or a held any sound like a held D or a held B, what you're doing is you're also you're shortening the vowel sound before it as well. So it's not what, it's what, Okay, so for that reason, that's part of the reason why I would say it's really more of a held sound than just removing the T sound completely. Okay. Compare that to a word, for instance, like interview, like inner instead of inter or inner. It's not really held. In that case, your vowel sound is still pretty full. Another quick question on grammar here. This kind of sounds or these kinds of sounds. This kind of sounds or these kinds of sounds. It depends. Both of those can work. Actually, hang on. I was not reading that question carefully. This kind of sound or these kinds of sounds. Sounds. You'd probably want to say these kinds of sounds. In general, you're going to see it's much, much, much more common to see the plural form, like these kinds of sounds. If you had this kind of sound, you would be more likely to put it into this kind. Oh no, Miami says that it's not letting her post her audio. Hello. Thanks for joining on the Lang 8 stream. You can follow. We're giving feedback for pronunciation and things like that. If you just joined on YouTube or Lang 8, you can see our YouTube stream at youtube.com/Fluent American. You'll be able to hear my audio and see the files that we're working with, just a note. Miami, it won't let you put it anywhere in the document. If anyone else is having this issue, be sure to let me know as well. See if you can put it in column B or C or D or E or anything through K on any number. Because I've not heard of people having issues with that before. That's really interesting. Okay. Going back again, the sentence that we are looking at. Did you know what the score was for last night's game? Did you know what the score was for last night's game? All right, let's take a listen to, we had 2 new files come in I want to take a look at. And then there's also one file. Someone sent me a file where they're describing a project they're working on. So we can do some grammar and pronunciation review of that as well. Let me share my screen and audio. Give me one moment. You guys will be able to see and hear what I am seeing and hearing. It's so interesting. Okay, let's hear this first one here.
Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Gonna play it one more time.
Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Okay, let's take a look at the first part of the sentence. And again, hello to people in the Lang 8 stream.
Did you know?
Did you know? Did you know? Part of the reason why I think you often see linking with did and you. And Miriam, we are talking about pronunciation. I'm listening to your pronunciation files and provide some feedback. So one of the things like when you're linking like did and you is to make that transition easier. What you're typically doing is you're making that j sound, because it's a little bit hard to say did you versus did you, okay? Because again, like your throat's already vibrating and things like that. So it's just a little bit smoother of a transition between did you. It's like did you. So I would recommend that for linking first of all. Or you can even look at the beginning of the stream. We talked about some other options for how to say did you.
Did you know?
Did you know? Did you know? So I can hear the stress on no, which is good. Very clear.
What the score was.
What the score was. I'm hearing the stress on was. What the score was. What the score was versus what the score was. Again, in English, you're more likely to put the stress on score than on was in this case.
Did you know what the score was?
What the score was. What the score was. That's kind of what I'm hearing versus what the score was. Did you know what the score was? Can you hear the difference between those? Just the only difference between them is what word you're choosing to stress. So that's kind of something to just be paying attention to. Thank you so much for the follow on Lang 8. I appreciate that. So watch out for stress. The more important thing in this situation, in this sentence, I think is going to be on score. So you're more likely to put the stress on score than on was.
Know what the score was for last night's game.
Watch out for some consonant clusters too. Last nights. Watch out for that TS sound at the end. Nights. Last nights. Last nights. So it's not last night. It's last night's game. And then on game, you want to raise that pitch more. You want to stress that more. Last night's game. And also notice the intonation pattern too. This is a yes/no question, right? The answer to this is yes, I do know the score. or no, I don't know the score. So to show that in English that you're asking a yes/no question, you need to make sure that you're rising. You have a rising intonation at the end. Last night's game. Did you know what the score was for last night's game? Versus this.
Was for last night game.
Because I'm hearing game with the kind of heavy fall. Versus game. Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Did you know what the score was for last night game?
I would also reduce the 4. The 4 there is pretty strong, right?
What the score was for last.
The score was for last night. You're almost putting 4 in its own thought group. You certainly can do that with words, but in general, I would say if you can, especially with if the word's just a preposition, prepositions aren't usually filler words. When people say like or but or things like that, those are filler words, but they're also transitions into your next thought group. You don't usually see prepositions taking on that sort of role. So I wouldn't normally suggest putting a preposition in its own thought group. Okay. So I would reduce the 4. A lot of times 4 actually gets reduced. It becomes just like for. Like, do you know what the score was for last night's game? So it's not for last night's game, more for last night's game, for last night's game, for last night's game. And so again, just to give you a compare, do you know what the score was for last night's game?
Did you know what the score was for last night game?
Okay, so those would be the big things I would recommend there. Thank you so much for sending your audio. I, as always, appreciate it. Go back to make sure there's any questions and things like that. I'm still really confused about this. I can't type in links because I have not protected anything. Very confused. I'm going to double check just to make sure that nothing in this section here is protected. Give me one moment. And again, during this time, of course, if you want to send me some pronunciation files, is this someone posted me a huge link? Oh my gosh, what is this? I'm nervous to click that. But I'm going to make sure that this down here, there's no protections or anything so that it is open. Checking our ranges. Yeah, I don't have anything. I don't have any protections up through that. So I'm definitely a little bit confused in that section about why you can't post there. Yeah, I have no answers. Okay, let me take a look. Okay, so I have another audio file I want to take a look at. If you posted this long Google link, I think I can get this. Hang on. Okay, Miami, is that yours? Is that your long Google link? Let me know. Post in the comments if that is yours. Hello to Jane checking us out on the Lang 8 stream. Okay. Hello to Sun. Is this Sunshine or is this a different Sun? Let me see. Also, Ed mentioning Ed's album is hot fire. It's selling like hotcakes. Buy one, get two. Or buy today, pay for two. Oh, pay for two and get one. Oh my gosh. Miami, I'm sorry. My Nightbot is going crazy. Sorry. Hello to Rod. Thanks for checking in, man. By the way, we've had some videos with Rod featured recently. Rod helped me with some Portuguese. I also compared a little bit of Portuguese and English in some of our recent videos. So definitely check out his channel if you're trying to get some more English practice. Definitely a good channel to check out. Okay, let's go back. As always, if you want to send me audios, my wife has still not returned with my son, so I cannot leave for the wedding yet, which means I am here with you guys a little bit longer, which is great. I will share my screen and my audio. We will listen to some more. Okay, next one here.
Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
It's pretty good. Mammy, is this you?
Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
I mean, this sounds supernatural. If this is not Miami, then someone has been putting their work in to their pronunciation.
Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Let me check the chat, see if Miami is getting to me. Okay. Miami, I'm going to assume that this is you. So let's just kind of identify things that are going on here.
Did you know what the
So again, notice that linking with the did ya.
Did you know what?
Did you know? Did you know? Okay. So again, reducing did. You reduce into ya. Linking them with that ja sound. Did you know? Did you know?
Did you know what the score was?
What the score was? What the score was? Again, stress on score. Pitch change. This is the gradual pitch change that we're talking about. You don't want it to become overstressed. So it's not what the score. It's like what the score. What the score.
You know what the score?
What the score.
You know what the
What the score. What the.
Did you know what the
What the score. So that's one thing you can do is like they're staying at about the same pitch level, right? Like what the. English has lots of variation in pitches, okay? It does go up and it goes down a lot. But at the same time, there's also moments where things stay relatively flat. So for instance, what the, nothing is getting stressed there. So you want to make sure that your pitch never really goes up. It can go down. You know, you could say like what the, you could do that. Or you keep them about the same pitch levels, like what the score. Those are just two options that you have.
Did you know what the score was for?
And notice again, stress on score, but then moves into was. So again, it's not overstressed. Score is your stressed word, but I'm holding it a little bit longer, but not super long. And it's going to continue flowing into the was. What the score was. What the score was.
Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
For last night's game. And again, so you get this 3-word group again, like last night's game, last night's game.
Last night's game.
Play that part again.
Was for last night's game.
For last night's game. So notice that 4 is going to get reduced, but last night's game, 3-word groups in general, the words will be held a little bit longer, a little clearer.
Was for last night.
And notice again, like we talked about earlier, 4 gets reduced, like for. Score was for. Thank you to Gabe for the follow on Lang 8.
The score was for last.
For. So again, it's not 4, it's more for. Very light. Again, super light. Gayun. Or gayon. It's like the stress is on the A. Okay. Got you. Appreciate the clarification. Okay. Appreciate that.
Last night's game.
Last night's game. So notice that, again, the 3-word group, another thing. So 4 is getting reduced. And then.
For last night's game. Last
night's game. So again, pitch level staying relatively consistent with last night and then rising higher on game to show your stress. Last night's game.
Was for last night's game.
And notice that intonation is about game. That sounds pretty good there. Yeah. So in general, I think this sounds pretty pretty good. If this is Miami, she's a native speaker, so that's what you would expect. But if this was an English language learner, then I think lots of nice, solid things to be paying attention to here. I'm gonna play it one more time. Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Yeah, and also placement, everything throughout. This sounds super relaxed and open. Okay, you know, it's not. Did you know? It's like, did you know? Like everything's. Flow, nice airflow, and things like that. Okay, as always, thank you for sending the audio. We cannot do this without you. Okay, so that is what I'm hearing there. Okay. She is. Thank you for sending the audio file, Miami. Yes, that was from a native speaker, just to give you an idea. Switch into the Japanese characters. Okay. And yes, she did very solid. She did great. Thank you so much for sending that audio. Nice to have some things to compare to. Hello, thank you for the follow on Lang 8. I appreciate that. Moving right along to our next person. So again, our sentence. Did you know what the score was for last night's game? There's some people I have not gotten to just yet. I want to double check this one. Okay. Let me share my audio and my screen one more time. Give me one moment. And let us listen to this.
Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Did you know what the score was for last night's game? Let's listen to that first part because I know Jade mentioned the did you.
Did you know what the
Did you know? I like that. I think that flows in really nicely.
Did you know what
Did you know? Did you know? Really good. You know, it's like the did reduced, the yeah reduced. Did you? Did you know? Did you know? So you're getting right to that stress part, the parts before it getting reduced, faster. I think the sounds are pretty good there.
Did you know what the score was for
What the score was? Maybe a little bit closed off for score. Like I'm here, score versus score, or score, score. I would like your throat to be a little bit more relaxed, a little more open, and more air for that or sound. Okay, I know that can be tricky, especially with the R, and even with the O sound too. But I do think that could have been a little bit more open on or.
Did you know what the score was for last
What the score was? Well, I do like how it runs into the West. What the score was, I do like that. I'll just try to get a little bit more open on the score
for last night's game?
for last night's game. For last night's game. I'll play again.
Was for last night's game?
Maybe a little game versus game. Game. I do think that and this is something I see a lot with linking to consonants after a lot of vowel sounds is that it sounds a little tense to me on like the game, like game, that M.
Game.
That game. I'm exaggerating it a bit, but it's almost like you're adding a slight vowel sound before the M. It's like game. But again, it's more gay, game. So you want that transition between your A sound to your M. This is also probably true for some similar combinations as well, like when you're trying to link hello to Grace in the Lang 8 stream. So this is true for other things as well. If you're trying to link vowels to consonants, like for instance, like aim versus aim, or like a word like pain, like you don't want to say pain, it's pain. So I think this happens for two reasons. One, I think it's because we make the vowel might be a little bit too tense. Secondly, we may the consonant might be too tense as well. So for instance, you might be getting like an versus an so it might be again your placement's too high on the M. Additionally, as well, what it could be is that your A sound, you know it's a diphthong, but you may be making that diphthong a little bit too strong. You know it's not A, it's A. Very slight movement. It is a diphthong, but the movement doesn't need to be so exaggerated. Okay.
Game.
Because I'm hearing game versus game. Hear difference between game and game.
Last night's game.
Yeah, so those would be my big suggestions there. And again, did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Did you know what the score was for last night's game?
Yes, those would be my big things. I think in general, the sentence rhythm is pretty good. Some sounds that you want to take a look at for your placement would be, again, linking vowels onto consonants like N or M. And then also for, again, like or and combinations like that. But in general, I think this sounds pretty good. Thank you, as always, for sending that audio. Can't do this without you. All right, let's see what else we got. Let's see. The Portuguese video. Portuguese placement for Portuguese. Oh man, it's so far back. It takes so much concentration. Oh my gosh. Yeah. We have a question here about contractions. Are contractions obligatory? Do you need contractions in formal informal speech? You know, I wouldn't say that they're in Zobaid, I see your question about the A sound. We'll talk about that in a moment. Are contractions obligatory in formal or informal speech? No, I mean, it's not mandatory. You don't have to. If your goal is to sound natural, though, like it depends what your goals are. If your goal is just to communicate an idea and have people understand it, you don't need contractions. You know, you're fine without them. If your goal is to sound like a native speaker, you're going to need contractions. In contractions, you know, some people like it blows my mind. Like some people are like, oh, they're informal or they're informal, and it's like, well, no, they're features of language. They're aspects of language that are used to convey ideas more quickly and efficiently. And you're going to hear contractions in meetings. You're going to hear contractions in phone calls. You're going to hear contractions in webinars and conferences. You're going to hear contractions when you talk to your friends. So it's not really a question of formal versus informal. It's a question of, it's just an aspect of language. Yeah, like I don't, kind of going to second what Miami is saying here. Yeah, apostrophes, like those contractions, things like that. Not really super. You'll hear them in all contexts. Yeah. So in terms of the contractions, yeah, I mean, I would say if you want to sound more natural, yeah, you need to look at some contractions because you're going to hear them all the time. In all honesty, people are using them, and in fact, not using contraction can make you sound weird. Like for instance, a common contraction a common word that's really you don't hear a lot is like will. Like you almost never hear will. It always gets contracted. You know, it's like ow or he'll. You know, it's never he will or I will. You know, you almost never hear the word will. Unless it's like being emphasized or it's the last word of a sentence. Like if you go like, oh, will you come please? All right, I will. Or like you're trying to insist at something, you know, those are only situations where it won't be contracted. If it's like the last word of a sentence. Okay. Other things too. So I'm not sure get the A sound in game and pain. Okay. So what I see happen a lot with students that are doing, for instance, like this A sound. And what I would say is that what I see with a lot of students is that first of all, instead of doing like an A, what I see a lot of students do is do like A. So notice how much tenser that gets at the end of the vowel sound. So instead of saying A, they do a lot of A. So that's the first thing is you don't want it to go that tense. You want it to be more relaxed. It's not A, it's A. The second thing is that a lot of times when a vowel like this links with an N or an M, instead of saying, for instance, a word like game, what I hear some students do is they'll do like game. So it's like aim. It almost breaks into two parts, like aim, as opposed to aim, game. So this is kind of what I mean is that, you know, with that A sound, you want to try to link onto the A with the M or the N more smoothly. You don't want to change the vowel sound right before them because otherwise you're going to end up with something completely different. Okay. So that's what I mean when you're saying game and pain. You don't want to say game, pain. It's more game, pain. Okay. I hope that's clear. Z, you can let me know if that still doesn't make sense. I think there may be some contractions that are slightly more informal, but I think for the wide variety of contractions, you're going to hear them in informal contexts. English with AK. Hey, I'm always looking for more English channels. That's great. I hope your channel's doing well. Go speak like an American English speaker. You know, I think when it comes to pronunciation and things like that, I think it's always kind of helpful to ask yourself, you know, why? And I think it's also good to ask yourself, what do I mean by an American English speaker? Because there's, you know, I speak differently than my parents. I speak differently than my wife, but we're all native English speakers, you know? So I think, you know, kind of determining what you mean by that. A lot of times what I think, how I interpret students saying that is they want to try to get like the rhythms and things like that are really natural to the language. And if that is the case, you know, studying things like stress, intonation patterns and things like that, and also placement is going to be super key. You know, in some ways, those might be more important concepts than, you know, getting every single vowel right or every single consonant right. Yeah. Going through the chat some more. So no one think you're too casual saying what's wrong instead of what is wrong. If I told my wife, like, what is wrong? She would look at me so weird, like, what is wrong? Like, you're wrong. It just sounds weird. Like, what is wrong? Versus what's wrong? And it's true. American Philly cheesesteak. So you know how I know you're not from Philadelphia, Miami? Is you call it a Philly cheesesteak. It's just a cheesesteak. It's not a Philly cheesesteak. It's just a cheesesteak. I'm gonna go. Like I'm gonna go versus I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go. Context. It's the most important situation when you're talking about situations like this is context. If you just say I'm not, like people would be like, what? Are you trying to like name someone? But if you say, oh, I'm gonna get something, or I'm gonna go, or I'm gonna tell them, you know, context makes all of these things clear. If you just have them by themselves, yeah, they don't make any sense. But if you put them in context and full sentences and things like that, native speakers, they're not even going to notice. They'll be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Context overrules everything. Context can make almost anything understandable. Let's see other things. Yeah, I probably wouldn't say "Imna." I would do "Imna" or "Ima," like I'm gonna go, or something like that. We got some domestic disturbances going on at home. And Zabeda says that is a little clearer. Great. Okay, I know that my wife must be closing in soon. Hello to Sarah. Thank you for checking in. Hello from France. Hello from the United States. And things. Yeah, that's exactly like I'm a go versus I'm a. I don't know if I personally use I'm a whole lot or I'm a, but regardless, I do know that there's at least one file. I want to make sure this one link went through, and someone sent me a longer file. Yeah, I think I've seen all of the audio files on the document. So if I have missed yours, this is your time to tell me, because otherwise I might not get to it today, and I want to. All right, but there was one file I know that was sent that this is a person describing a project at work. Okay. So for this, we're going to do some pronunciation practice and maybe some real quick grammar things as well, since it seems like we have a little bit of time for it. Okay. I'm going to share my screen and my audio. Give me one moment. That's a good opportunity for me to take a water break. I have my water. You may have seen me drinking it. I've been so good about remembering this, guys. You should be happy for me. Geoff is taking care of himself. I'm adulting. I'm being an adult. Look at me. All right, let me share everything again. Let's take a look at this. Okay, so again, so this is a slightly longer file. This is a 15-second file. I'm going to be taking some notes on some grammar things that I hear. Okay, let's take a listen.
I'm a university student, and last semester I was given a project to write about the history of my country. I had 3 partners to work on it as well. I think we did rather well on it because we secured really high marks and the teacher really liked our work.
Okay, some very clear Indian influences or Indian language influences, because it's not directly in India, but speaking similar languages to that. Let me hear a couple of quick words I just wanted to hear. University. Again, American English will be that T sound, that itty. You're typically going to get like a fast D sound. So it's not going to be itty, more itty, short I sound. University. Notice how heavy that verse sound is. Okay, that's really where your stress is. University. Given a project, a lot of students, if you have British training or just from your own native language influences, it's more pra sound, like for instance, like hot or stop, project. Also want to watch out for those THR combinations, right? Like three. Make your TH sound clear first. Make that really clear. Then hold that R sound. And then you can move on to your E sounds, like three. Partners as well. Again, the British influence can be strong for people. Both these R sounds need to be very present. So it's not partners, it's word partners, ers. So making sure that is strong as well. Partners. How about some other things?
I'm a university student.
How can we make this sound a little bit more natural in American English?
I'm a university student.
I'm a university student versus I'm a university student. Too many stresses. I'm a university student. I would have reduced the I. I would have reduced student. I would have just kept the stress on university. I'm a university student. I'm a university student versus
I'm a university student.
Okay. Because right now it's almost like every syllable is kind of having the same amount of stress. It's like I'm a university student versus I'm a university student. Can you hear the differences between those? Your unstressed syllables can be said faster. Not every syllable needs to be pronounced the same way. Okay. We have a quick question here from Maria. Thank you for the question. What's the best way to start learning English in your opinion? Oh my gosh, what? Maria, if you, let me finish this dialogue really quick, and then we can try to tackle this question. This question comes up every live stream. it's a huge question. Give me like 2 minutes to finish taking a look at this audio, and then we will try to answer this question as best we can. No, it's a great, it's a great question. Everyone has this question. But let's the rest of the
I'm
audio
a
file.
university student, and last semester I was given.
And okay, so another thing between British and American English, again, last. So it's not last, it's not last semester, it's last semester. And last semester,
I was given a project.
I was given a project. Versus I was given a project. Too many stresses. Take off the stress on given, put the stress just on project. I was given a project. Verbs in English usually do not get stressed unless you're trying to emphasize them. If you have like a subject, verb, object situation, most likely your subject's not going to get stressed. Most likely your verb's not going to get distressed. Most likely your object's going to get distressed. Okay. So instead of I was given a project, or I was given a project, take off that stress.
To write about the history of my country.
To write about the history of my country. Write about the history of my country versus write about the history of my country.
Project to write about the history of my country.
History of my country versus country versus country.
History of my country.
Country. I would move the stress on country. I think you're stressing a little bit that second syllable too much. You want to stress the first syllable. History of my country. This is true for a lot of languages that are similar to languages you find in India, where stresses often fall in other parts of the word and things like that. And that changes your rhythm completely. If you're saying like country versus country, you know, things like that, reduce that second syllable more.
I had 3 partners to work on it as well.
I had 3 partners to work on this as well. I would have stressed 3 partners and then well. So I would have stressed partners and well.
It as well.
I'm going to back that up a little more.
I had 3 partners to work on it as well.
As well. I would also reduce the as a little bit as well.
I think we did rather well on it because
we did rather well. I think we did rather well. I would have reduced the rather a little bit. I think we did rather well on it. I would have stressed well more. I think we did rather well on it. Also, watch out again, rather with that THER sound. Rather. Try to get that there sound rather well. I think we did rather well.
I think we did rather well on it because
you didn't stress well enough. Rather well is more rather well. You need to raise the pitch on well a little bit more because right now it's staying too flat. Rather well versus rather well. I think we did rather well versus rather well, more rather well.
Because we secured really high marks.
We secured, instead of secured really high marks, I would say we got good grades. We got good grades. In North America, you don't usually see marks. You usually see grades or score and things like that, just to note. Okay, we got good grades.
And the teacher really liked our work.
And the teacher, heavier stress on the T. And the teacher really liked our work. And the teacher really liked our work. Okay, so my biggest suggestion for this file is pay attention to the words that I'm stressing and also the words I'm reducing, and use those to kind of guide your speech, because right now there's just so many words here that I probably wouldn't normally receive as stress, or the stress is falling on a different part of the word, and this is really affecting your sentence rhythm. Additionally, I think right now in general every syllable is getting about the same amount of weight. Or to give you an example, every syllable is getting about the same amount of weight versus every syllable is getting about the same amount of weight. Okay, and in reality, English doesn't work like that. Stress syllables longer. If it's not stressed, say it a little faster. Reduce the vowel sound. Those would be my big suggestions here. You know, super clear. You know, clarity not an issue. I think the ideas are expressed really well. But if the goal is to have more of a natural kind of American English rhythm, these are the things you'll want to be considering. Okay. Thank you so much for sending the audio. Again, we can't do this without you guys. Can't do it without you. All right. Let me just check the chat box really quick, and then we have a great question that we need to explore. Let me see. English with Vanessa. I don't know where Vanessa is from. That is a great question. Yes, you can send a voiceover about a work project. Go for it. Go for it. Yeah. Go for it. Yep. Talking about the Wilson, things like that. And good information here about, there are lots of words where if you change the stress, it changes the meaning of the word, like contract versus contract and things like that. You see that a lot, or like record versus record, where you put the stress changes the meaning. Sophie, thank you so much for the comment. I really appreciate that about the setup. Loving our live side, I imagine. Yeah, look at that guy. Okay, so let's go back to your question. You've been very patient waiting, Maria. So Maria had asked us, and I'll post this in the chat box. So in case you guys have some thoughts, you can ask that. And again, this is for the chat box on the YouTube stream. You can see it again on youtube.com/Fluent American. If you're following along, what is the best way to start learning English? And I'm going to kind of expand this to go like kind of just learning languages in general, because I don't think this is true just for English. I think it's true for anything. Best way to start learning English. What a question, right? We always end our live streams with these monster questions. It's like, oh my gosh. Okay, but let's try to answer. Okay, so what's the best way of learning? Well, I think my own kind of personal views on language learning have changed. Is, I still do. I was a former IELTS examiner, so I did stuff with speaking and writing. I've taught at language centers. I was the director at a language center. I love grammar. I think grammar is super interesting and fun. I know not everyone likes it, but I think it's cool. But I think the more experience I've had with languages and just the difficulties I have seen, and things like that, what if I were learning a new language from scratch, which is hard because I have a 3-year-old. But if I were learning a new language from the beginning, I've said this before. Hello to XR. Thanks for checking in. If I were learning a new language from start, I would spend, honestly, probably like the first month to 2 months just doing pronunciation. In all honesty, that's where I would begin. And a lot of people don't like hearing that because they're like, oh, but I want to talk and things like that. Or they look away or they run away to find another teacher. And that's fine. I get it. But what I see is that for many of you here, if you're watching this channel, especially on YouTube, if you're on Lang 8, you could be at any level. But in general, people following me on YouTube are relatively advanced language learners. And I think this is because, one, you kind of need to understand English to a degree to understand my content for the most part, not everything, but for the most part. But the other part of that is advanced language learners that are often the people that start becoming interested in pronunciation. And again, if you're not sure what the channel is, it's Fluent American, youtube.com/Fluent American. Okay. So a lot of people don't even begin thinking about pronunciation until they've already reached a high level at the language. And that's fine. That certainly can work out. The problem is, though, that if you don't start studying pronunciation until that moment, well, the reality is you've created this system that you're using. You're creating this pronunciation system that you're using that is not quite standard. And if your goal, and not everyone has this goal, but if your goal, Maria, if you could tell me what YH, is that a typo? If your goal is to sound like a native speaker, because a lot of people have that goal, it's not necessarily, we could talk about goal setting and how good of a goal that is, but regardless, if your goal is to sound as natural as possible, well, then that means if you've already learned a certain way of speaking, you have to unlearn it and then relearn a new way. Whereas if you, and again, there's not a whole lot of information there's not a lot of research on this, but it's just my own impression is that if you spend time in the beginning, just kind of dedicated to pronunciation and things like that from the very beginning, then in some ways, I imagine it would be easier to carry that over as you progress. So I think that in the long term, it helps you out when you're an advanced learner. But besides pronunciation, so if you're starting with a language, my first recommendation is like, hey, slow down. Don't worry about talking yet. Let's just kind of get pronunciation. Think of it this way too. Babies, like everyone looks like, oh, kids are so great at learning languages. No, they're not. Like kids are like, they don't talk for like a year and a half to like 2 years. They just listen for a year and a half. You're not being fair to yourself because you take a language class and you expect to talk after one class. You know, you take a language class your first day, you expect to know how to say hi, how are you, and things like that. Babies, like they can't say that stuff for a very long time. So you're ahead of the game. There are other advantages that also adults have over kids too, that if you're interested about that, we can talk about that later. But in addition to that, what I would say, listening materials. Okay. So probably beginning by developing some of your passive skills a bit. It's like, for instance, reading and listening. I'm sorry about the Nightbot. And Zobeda mentions that agree with pronunciation at the beginning, but overfocusing can decrease motivation. And yes, you do want to stay motivated. So that's kind of another factor as well. You want to do things that you're interested in and that you find fun. Okay. If the moment that you start seeing this as like work, like you're like, oh, I have to do this, I have to learn this language, like you start getting that feeling, that might be a sign that maybe you need to take a break or something like that, because that's not the right attitude to have. Because the more you enjoy what you're doing, the faster you'll learn. There's all kinds of studies. You know, if you have two language learners, one of them is learning it for a job and one of them is learning it because they just really enjoy it. I mean, the person who enjoys it is just going to learn faster, and they're going to remember the information better. You know, so enjoying what you're doing is really key. Okay, so you know, stay motivated. It's like if you're studying pronunciation, but you're like, I'm getting bored of this or something like that. Okay, take a break. Do something. It's okay to do something else. You know, I'm just saying that in terms of like targeting and things like that, that's what I would target more. Other things that are important, let's talk a little bit about vocab. You know, I think that a lot of people use like vocab textbooks and things like that, or they'll use like Anki, or they'll use memrise.com and things like that. And the problem with those things is that you're using other people's words. You're using things that other people told you to study, and then you're like, oh, I should study these too. And it's like, well, you don't have a connection to those words. Someone just said, oh, these are good. These are the 2,000 most common words, or like these are words that you need for IELTS and things like that. Speaking of IELTS really quick, you need to develop your main ideas. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to don't give like super personal examples, but Zobeda, I would really direct you, take a look at my whole playlist of IELTS writing test twos. But yeah, the going back to vocabulary, one problem I see with students is they'll learn vocab and then a week later I'll ask them about it and they forget it. Hello to Rona. That's a problem. If you are always forgetting vocabulary, then that's a sign that you have not learned the word well enough. Rona, if you have a question, you can post it in the chat on Line 8. And so what I would say is that if you're learning vocab, to give you an example, so I talked to my son in Italian. Italian is not my first language. I'm not a native speaker. I think my Italian is pretty good, but I make mistakes, but I'm still using it with him. So we often learn words together. Like we'll watch, for instance, a video. He likes construction vehicles. So I have learned so many words about construction in Italian. When we get a new word, to give you an example, he learned like a cement truck. And so we knew that before. So like a betoniera. And the part of a cement truck that holds the cement, like the water and the mixing, you know, that part we learned is like called a tamburo, which is similar to like a drum, and things like that. And I didn't know the word for that before. This was new for me. But what I did, I haven't made any flashcards for that. I saw the word once, and I'm still able to remember it because I hear the new word, and as soon as I hear a new word, I get to work. Okay, if I hear a new word and I'm like, I want to learn this word, I put my mind to work immediately. I'm like, okay, what are some things that are similar to this? Okay, so I thought of like a tambourine. Okay, it's like a tambourine is a type of drum, and I knew that in English. Okay, like a drum. Okay, so like drum can be like an instrument, but a drum can also be something that like it can hold things like a container, like a round container and things like that. So what I was doing is immediately I'm putting my mind to work, trying to make as many connections as I can. Like, okay, what sounds like a tambourine? Sounds like it's a type of drum. It can hold thing. Like I'm coming up with as many different connections as I can as soon as I hear the new word. And the thing that I think a lot of people get stuck on with vocabulary is they focus so much on the definition, but they don't think about the connections. You're not trying to think of ways to connect your vocab with yourself. So you want to, as soon as you get, like, for instance, a new word with vocab, you want to try to think about what it looks like, what it feels like. Think about how it makes you feel, like an emotion, like if it makes you happy, excited, or whatever. You want to think about what it smells like. The more connections you have with vocab, the harder it will be for you to forget. Because that's the second thing I would say is that if you're learning a new language, when you're learning new vocab, try to connect it to yourself as much as possible. A similar thing to that too, when you're learning vocab, don't just learn a word by itself. Try to learn some words that go with it. Okay, so for instance, if you're learning a noun, try to find a verb that commonly uses that noun, or find an adjective that commonly describes that noun. Because now what you're doing is, again, you're getting more connections, but you're also, I don't, like, if you're an advanced language learner, you've probably had the experience where you're like, okay, I have vocabulary, but I feel like the sentences I'm using aren't natural, or I feel like my sentence structure is very similar to my first language. I don't know if the sentence is fully right. So by doing these sorts of connections, by, like, instead of just learning one word, trying to pair it with like a group of words, well, now you're starting to build up phrases, because the reality is you don't talk one word at a time. You talk in groups of words at a time, whether it's through collocations or just common phrases that go together. And so you want to start building up that sort of chunking as early in the language as possible. There was a theory of language learning called, like, the audiolingual method, and it's very outdated and it has issues. It was very popular in like the 40s, but the audiolingual method, kind of similar to shadowing, is like you would get a sentence and then you would just repeat the sentence. And I have issues with the audiolingual method, but I think some of the ideas behind it are actually okay, especially if you understand the grammar of the sentence, where, repeating maybe shorter chunks, maybe not whole sentences, but shorter chunks of language together can be very helpful. Okay, so that's another thing I would recommend, is don't just learn a word by itself, learn words together. I would also, I want to do an experiment. I think I mentioned this before. I want to do an experiment where I learn a language without taking any notes. I want to learn a language where it's just all like, I don't use any paper. I don't use any pens. It's just all like me speaking. So, like, I can use like recorders. I can record people. I can play back recordings and just listen. I want to see if that helps me learn speaking faster in the language, because this is just my own theory, but I have a theory that by relying so much on notes and things like that, I think it makes us into passive, like, everyone's passive vocabulary is bigger than their active vocabulary. You know more words when you see them or when you hear them than you do when you speak. That's every language learner experiences this. Okay, super common experience. So I'm curious that if by this method, especially if I'm interested in speaking, will this actually help my speaking? Because the only way I can study this word is by speaking it or by hearing it, as opposed to relying on the written form. So when I get more free time, when my son's able to start school and things like that, that's definitely an experiment I want to try to see how well it goes. Because I think we can get a little over reliant on passive forms, too much on reading, too much just on listening. And that's another strategy too. So another strategy I would really recommend if you're starting from the beginning is you want to make your, you want to make sure that you're, when you're listening, don't just listen. Listening and washing the dishes, or like listening and, doing your homework and things like that, or listening and doing other things, you'll improve, but your speed's going to slow down. If you want to study listening, make it active listening. You need to take notes. You need to repeat. You need to listen again, playback. For instance, if you're watching a TV show, I've said this before. If you're watching a TV show, instead of watching a full episode, why not just watch like the first 3 or 4 minutes and then watch that part again like 2 or 3 times? you'll be surprised at how much more information you take in, because each time you listen to it, you're going to get different information. Okay. And the last thing is that even if you're a beginner, I would say try to find native speakers using the language that you know to practice your listening. Okay. So for instance, I know beginners, if you're a beginner, it's like, oh my gosh, but how can I understand native speakers and things like that? What I think you see in a lot of textbooks or beginner, like you can go to YouTube and you can find like beginner English conversations, and you'll hear this conversation that is spoken like this. They will talk this slowly to make sure that you understand every word that they are saying. But people don't talk like that. It's a very inauthentic language. So what happens is you're getting used to a language that doesn't actually exist. So exposing yourself to as authentic language as possible. What you can do, I mean, YouTube's nice because on YouTube you can slow down the playback speed. So even if something is a little bit fast, you can slow down the speed, but at least you're still getting kind of the natural linking. Again, we've talked English, stress time language, reductions, linking between words. There's lots of things that are happening that if you slow the language down, you're removing those aspects of the language. And so you're using material that's less accurate. So, try to get as authentic materials as you can. So those are just some quick things I would recommend if you're starting a new language. What are some things you should be considering? Those are what I would consider. I know I missed a number of comments. Maria saying that she can understand native speakers but can't talk properly. That's everyone's experience, I believe. I'm glad that you can understand what I'm saying. That's great. Yeah. Some other things that I missed. So pronunciation phonetics in real life is hard. I've heard that time passes, you're hearing a reciprocating of other sounds. It gets harder. You have to keep in mind, one advantage that babies have is that babies can hear every sound in every language. But they know that they don't need every sound in every possible language because they're only going to speak one major thing. So one major language usually, or two major languages. They don't need every single sound. So as you get older, you kind of focus just on the sounds you need for your language. You can learn new sounds. It just takes time. It's called noticing. Like, for instance, if you think like man and men sound the same, then that's just a sign that, I need to study my ass and my S sound more. So just some things to consider. Rona, I saw your question. Give me a moment. I will be back to it. Just checking some comments in the chat. Okay. But yeah, you can improve that. We talked about motivation. That's the other thing, having no one to correct you. That's part of the reason why we have our pronunciation group on Telegram, because, every day I'm giving you feedback on pronunciation, because that's part of the reason why I started that group. Let's see. From the beginning. Yeah, I think, Ed, what you're talking about, like unlearning and then relearning pronunciation, that's, I think, most language learners' experiences in many different languages. Silly sentences can definitely help. You do mnemonic devices, they're called, things that help you remember. That's interesting. Embarrassing moments in your second, those are great learning experiences. They're painful. Don't get me wrong. I don't want you to have embarrassing moments, but if you make a mistake in the language that's embarrassing, well, you're probably not going to make that mistake again. You're going to learn that. The experience. I know I've had experiences like that when I was abroad. And definitely external subtitles. Don't get over reliant on subtitles, but subtitles can be helpful. If speaking about subtitles really quick, what I would recommend if you find that you need subtitles when you're listening and things like that, I would recommend listening 2 times at least. The first time you listen to something, try not to use any subtitles. Just kind of follow as best you can. And then the second time, you can use subtitles. And then keep alternating. So that way you don't become over-reliant on the subtitles. The other thing, too, with subtitles is subtitles are not perfect. A lot of subtitles are approximations. They'll give you, this is about the same thing as what they said. But it's not the exact words they said. So it can be a little bit confusing. Miami, Miami, can you send me a message on go to my website. If you can send me a contact me message and things like that. If you want to get involved, we can get in touch. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so Miami is following us on the YouTube stream, actually. All right, Rona also asked a question. My wife's still not back, so I am still all yours. Let's see what Rona's question was. Let's scroll back a bit. Rona asks, is it better to get straight down to business, or is it more important to allow, even encourage small talk? Rona, in what context are we talking about? Rona, are you talking about from a teacher's perspective? Are you talking about from like a live stream perspective? Are you talking about from just like interacting with people? Like, get down to business when? At work. So it's important to get good. It depends on, it's all about company culture. I'll put it this way. So for instance, when I was teaching in language centers and things like that, so I was working at a language center. I think that for language students, especially in a teaching environment like that, what I would say is, it's all about the culture that you want to have. Okay. So like for my culture, I think it's really important for people to feel like they can express themselves freely. I think that, why does small talk exist? I think small talk exists not to bother you or to be like, oh, I hate this like annoying conversation. I'm never going to see this person again. Like small talk is an opportunity for you to connect with other people. And I think that if you remove that sort of connection from the people you're working with, if you don't give them that sort of experience, that's fine. I think your work environment can still be very healthy and things like that. But I think it's really important to still give people a chance to connect with others in a way that I don't know, is more like human. It's not human to be down to business all the time. That's not very, that's just not very natural. People want to connect with each other. People are social. We're social creatures. So, you can let small talk go too far, but a little small talk, I'm not bothered by that. In fact, that's usually how I start, even with my pronunciation, like with my students now. I don't start class and be like, all right, we're studying this sound today. Let's go. Like that feels very abrupt. There's no transition. There's no, you're not really viewing that person as a person. So, I think starting with a bit of small talk, from a management perspective, is also helpful for kind of gauging where your employees are, or if you're on a team perspective, it lets you know where your team is. You want to know where's their head at, what's their space? How are they feeling today? Are they excited about something? Are they frustrated about something? Are they angry? Because you're dealing with people. It's not like people are the same all the time. So small talk is your opportunity from a leadership perspective to understand how are you going to convey the information that you need to convey. Are you going to be firm because they're being a little bit too silly? Are you going to be more supportive and compassionate? Are you even like, maybe you had a work you needed to do, but you can tell that your employees today's just not going to work. They're really distracted. Maybe they had something happen with their family. Work's not going to go well today. So what can we do? Maybe we'll need to adjust our plans. Like, oh, I wanted to do this, this, and this at work today, but my employees it's not going to work. Like they just had a death in their family or something like that. Let's go easier today. If I just went right to business, I'm missing out on that. I can come off as cold. And that's not what I'm about. So yeah, I think small talk is very important, even at work. Okay. I do have to head out very shortly, guys. So this is your chance. If you have last questions or comments, this is your time to let me know. Rona, thank you for the question. I appreciate it. Kind of articulating your teeth about the stream. Some of you said, are they... I didn't even notice how I said, are they? I don't think I was like super strong, right? I don't think I did like our day, right? Our day versus are they? But maybe I did. I don't know. other quick things. All right, so I can actually hear my wife and my son and everyone at the door. That is also my dog, so that is my cue that I need to head out. So again, Miame, if you have a question, if you can send me a message on one of the social pages and we will get in touch and try to organize something. But yeah, thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope to see you in a it's the dog reveal. Next one. It's a little bit hard to organize right now. I'll try to bring it next one. I'm sorry to keep Nightbot. I'm sorry. Watch out for the caps. Thank you guys so much for your time. As always, I really appreciate you sending audio files. Again, if you sent me audio files today, keep that link for the stream. Keep that link for the spreadsheet because that's the same one we use every time. So for our next week's live stream, it'll be the same thing. Also, quick, next week's live stream will also be at a different time because I have to watch my son all day. So most likely it'll be at a very early morning or late at night. So just a heads up on that, and my apologies for that. But we do have a video coming out tomorrow. If you want to support the channel, if you see the video, click it. If you like it, try to watch as much of it as you can. These are things that really do help out. Also liking and commenting and things like that. Thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for audio files and things. I hope to see you in a future stream. Have a good day. Have a good night. Have a good afternoon. And I will see you guys later. Take care.